It's sensible and responsible for web developers not to drop support for all the HTML4 browsers that will be in heavy use for some time to come. So I conclude this section of the tutorial on HTML5 with a review of some things that are recommended to move things forward to HTML5 in a positive way. Even though HTML 4.01, XHTML 1.0, and HTML5 are all very similar, there are some small syntax differences that can invalidate your code. Keeping this in mind, HTML5 has some built-in slack to make the transition a little bit easier. For example, when marking up a form in HTML5, this code here is the proper syntax for the text input element. But this code here, which is from HTML4, is also accepted as valid code in an attempt to ease the pain for avid XHTML coders who are used to self-closing their elements. As you can see right here, the close tag is a little bit different in HTML4. The same rules apply to meta and other self-closing elements. Legacy elements like bold and italic were also left in HTML5 to help those coming over from HTML 4.01. So this transition will be eased because most HTML5 browsers are more flexible in handling incorrect syntax. In fact, HTML5 is designed so that old browsers can safely ignore new HTML5 constructs. In contrast to HTML4, the HTML5 spec gives detailed rules for parsing this content with the intent that different compliant browsers will produce the same results in the case of incorrect syntax. Another strategy for easing the transition to HTML5 is to semantically align your div names with that of the new HTML elements such as header, footer, and nav. This will help you get used to the names themselves and also the new functionality and nesting that you can do with the new header and footer elements in particular. This isn't difficult, but can take a little practice to get used to it. So before jumping full force into HTML5 production sites, I recommend trying the soft transition strategy by changing your div name slightly. There's no apparent downside to doing this. You can even use the new HTML5 doc type with very little consequence. You can also fake HTML5 functionality with JavaScript, but I don't recommend this, particularly when in production with actual websites. If the scripting fails, it will completely collapse the site in browsers that won't take CSS applied to these new elements. Another strategy is to build browser-specific apps. Depending on your audience, this is a real option now as you listen to this, especially if you're building for very narrow and specific audiences and are targeting a specific browser or device. As I mentioned previously, HTML5 is all about controlling the environment. Controlling the environment allows you to control features delivered to the user that much better. Google is currently doing this with Google Wave. To see HTML5 taken as far as it will go, and perhaps even a little further, check out Google Wave. For your targeted device or audience, check whether the HTML5 features and functionality you want to deploy are currently supported, and then test to determine the depth of this support. As we move forward, HTML support will get better and better, and this will become easier. In conclusion, with the strong foundation set up by previous versions of HTML and with a large and active community supporting web standards, we're coming into a new age for the web. This will be an age where, armed with the wealth of knowledge and with the ability to learn from past mistakes and also to make some new ones, we can set up a new version of HTML with the expectations for it to be a very powerful markup language. It's up to us to utilize it in a way that can be beneficial to everybody. There are many great features in HTML5 and a growing list of great APIs. We can make data available offline, easily combine technologies, and create very intricate animations all within a familiar landscape. If you have the time, I encourage you to browse through the entire HTML5 spec and familiarize yourself even further with all the bells and whistles, there are quite a few of them, so that we can use HTML5 to build stronger, richer web applications for years to come.